20th century left behind a painful and complicated legacy of massive trauma, monstrous crimes, radical social engineering, and collective individual guilt syndromes that really need to be deconstructed. More often than not, the past appears simply as a devastated landscape full of corpses, dashed illusions, failed myths, betrayed promises, and unprocessed memories. And now, over 2 decades into the 21st century, the history repeats. And not just the current wars that are going on in Gaza, Lebanon, Palestine, and Ukraine, but in Afghanistan, Ethiopia, Haiti, Somalia, Syria, Yemen, the list seems endless. But the historical experience of the previous century still fundamentally shapes how we envisage our contemporary world at numerous levels: personal, local, national, continental, you get the picture. But you need perspective. You need to read, and you need to have conversations with people who can provide oftentimes some very profound knowledge and understanding of the longer, deeper structural processes of history. Like many of my generation, I have continued to be attentive to the Holocaust, reading the better publicized contributions by scholars, the witness testimonies as they've appeared, usually in English translation, and I've watched the better films and television documentaries. And I did this for much the same reasons that I read the memoirs and poems which came out of the trenches of World War I. It's a matter of moral and social duty, I think. Attention must be paid to extreme human suffering, and we must do what we can to make some of that suffering sensible to ourselves. And I think there's also an element of guilt involved. These great events only brushed my privileged, uneventful personal history, and it brushed it only lightly. Yes, I have lived through some very interesting times, but I have not had to suffer them. So over the last 6 years, I've immersed myself in what I call my genocide project, reading thousands of books and studies, I think 75 plus movies and documentaries, all on man's merciless techniques and machines of human destruction through the ages. But that work has also involved 200 plus hours of interview time with genocide scholars such as Jacques Semelin, Serge Klausfeld, Edith Gavran, Jean-Marc Zeitris, and Pavel Zawicki, plus numerous other genocide authorities. And what is the end result? It's the production of 2 films being produced in tandem because the content and themes overlap. The first film is called Genocide, The Bitter Fight Over Its Meaning. The focus is really on dehumanization. It's dehumanization that fuels the worst brutality that human beings perpetrate against one another. And it is not just a problem of the modern industrial age we live in. This has haunted humanity for millennia. Genocide is the most disturbing example of dehumanization's destructive power. But we're also going to discuss in that film genocide as that is used today. The ongoing debate over whether genocide describes the current Israeli violence in Gaza and the war in Ukraine has become the occasion for politicians and scholars and activists and lawyers, all of them, to reappraise the legal architecture and the history that we have all inherited and to begin to rethink how moral responsibility for the worst categories of crimes really ought to be assigned. But the moral force of the word genocide and the public understanding of the word, they've become fully detached from the relatively narrow legal meaning that the word genocide has today. The second film is entitled A Blind Man's Vision of the Dark Side, The Extraordinary Life of Jacques Semelin. Jacques is the most fascinating person I have ever met in my life. He is French, a professor at the Institute of Political Studies in Paris, which is a very selective research university of international standard. It was here that Jacques created a pioneering course on genocide and mass violence, as well as programs on the civil resistance processes that are active in dictatorships. His research is unequaled. His work is based on a multidisciplinary approach using history, political science and social psychology. And he was the first genocide expert ever to take this approach. And the key thing to understand about Jacques' work is this: it's not just a study of the Holocaust. He has done a deep dive into the Rwandan genocide, the ethnic cleansing in Bosnia-Herzegovina, as well as the atrocities in Syria, respecting the specific issues of each of these appalling phenomena. My task is to introduce you to his work and his approach. And as a side note, most incredibly, Jacques is blind. In his autobiography, he talks about how he brutally learns at the age of 16 that he will become blind. For years, he keeps the secret to himself by confronting the anxiety and the progression of the blindness all by himself. He then fights to become a researcher, to obtain his PhD, and to continue his passion, a deep investigation of genocide, massacres, and the themes of resistance. And we'll talk about that in this documentary. The primary aim of these films is to challenge the bafflement over their cause and the demoralization which attends it. And what I'm trying to do is dispel what's called the Gorgon effect, which is the sickening of imagination and curiosity and the draining of will, which afflicts so many of us when we try to look squarely at the persons and the processes implicated in the Holocaust, in all genocides, and in all massacres. My purpose is to arrive at a clear understanding of at least some of the persons and some of the processes, to be confident that the whole is potentially understandable. And this is not a matter of arriving at some kind of aha, now I comprehend everything. It doesn't work that way. The understanding I seek comes from framing sufficiently precise questions to be able to see exactly what is before us, whether persons or processes. It is both cumulative and singular, but never complete. I'm not a historian, but I'm a writer, a researcher, a journalist with subject matter expertise in several areas. And I have a methodology. I have an approach. But the key thing is that the material I did read, the films I did watch, and the people I did speak with, all of that provided me with a system of ladders that I needed to scramble over this horrible abyss. The greatest difficulty for any reader and any filmmaker is to keep one's critical balance in the face of all this horrendous material. Even reduced to marks on paper, it is profoundly disturbing, exacting, with sleepless nights and darkening days. And today, we are certainly in darkening days. But I'll tell you, it's taken me down an enlightening path, and many of you have been along with me. And it's also taken a toll on my time and my resources. And many of you have asked me, how can I support these films? There's various ways. You can earn yourself a film credit, and you can actually also earn yourself a tax deduction. There is an information page popping up shortly with more information. So I hope many of you will join me on this journey. And I'll be here too, right? Yep. Okay, that's good, thank you. Okay. As I noted earlier, a production of this kind takes an awful lot of time, my time, and an awful lot of resources. And many of you have written to me saying, how can I contribute to the production of these films? If you're interested in making a financial contribution, please email me at the address now appearing on your screen, and we can discuss getting you a tax credit and/or a film credit. And I want to add one other note. Over the last 6 years, we've produced about 5 or 6 short videos which kind of explain what we're trying to do, what we're trying to cover, what we want to discuss. And you can access these short films by going to our YouTube site, which is now appearing at the address on your screen. And I do hope you'll join me on this journey.